Our primary is in March in Illinois.
Okay.
So 2026 is here.
Yes.
It is
Yep.
here. So, and I was reading one of the headlines that I sent to you that the chaos has begun. And but we're going to get right to that. And Greg's going to be here next week.
Okay.
Greg Alice. Yep.
Yeah.
He's going to be
Yeah.
doing he's going to be showing vigilantes.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm going to work with him. And I think he's going to do a national, people are going to be able to watch it nationally, national conversation. Call him because maybe you all can. He's going to do it, I think, on the 5th.
Okay.
If I'm in town, I'm going to co-host it. I might be in Washington for the prayer breakfast.
Okay.
And then I've got to run up to New York for Claudette Colvin's service. So,
yeah.
So there's, hey, you know what a life, so let me go on and take care of this. So let's get to it. What a day. Okay. And I'm going to come up in 30 seconds. Hey, everybody, correctional officer for the lockdown. I love that name. Robert Shalom. Andre, how you doing? Hey. Dave Dowling. Hey, my sweet up there in Canada, aren't you? So everybody like and share the show. Like and share. I need you to give us some thumbs up. Do that. And continue to tell people about the show. Of course, Daryl Jones is on WOL every Tuesday at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, WOLDC. So please give him and Barbara Arnwine your support. They deserve it. So let's come right on in 15 seconds so that I can have something clean, something that we can remember. And we are up in 5. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It is a joy to be with you. We have got a lot going on. Rainbow Push is on its way to Minneapolis, St. Paul. You do not want to miss it, specifically to Minneapolis. There is a lot about this story in Minneapolis that is not being told. People of color, just all across the board, Somali Americans, Black Americans, are keeping their children home from school. Latinos are keeping their children home from school. Indigenous people are keeping their children home from school out of fear. So the public school system in Minneapolis has really moved to a very significant remote teaching mode because the kids are afraid to go to school. Now, remember, during COVID, part of the challenge we had was that a lot of our children are not digitally connected. They're not connected to the internet. They don't have computers. So that's something, as we are marching, as we're looking at these general strikes, please make it about more than ICE. You've got your health care on the line. If you want to have a general strike, and I certainly do agree with that, because everything, you've got people who are about on their way to becoming trillionaires while more and more Americans are falling into economic despair, while our international reputation is being obliterated. We are going into the Winter Olympics, and an ice team is supposed to be going over there. And the Europeans have said, we do not want them here. Absolutely do not bring them here. Can you imagine? We're in that position right now. 20 million American families cannot afford health care. They don't have it. If you're going to march about that too. March about a 50-year mortgage. You'll never own anything. March about affordability. All the way around. Affording food. March about that. Think about that, everybody. Everything is on the table right now. Everything. So let's get to it. The FBI did something. Here we go. They raided the election hub of the 2020 election. And what does that mean? What does that mean? Well, it means the chaos has begun. That was the headline in Common Dreams. The the uncertainty about the 2026 election, which is already here. In the state of Illinois, we're going to have our primaries in 6 weeks, more or less. So the primary season is here. The 2020 election season is here. But will you be able to vote? Remember, the Attorney General of the United States has called for all 50 states, plus Washington, D.C., to turn over their voter rolls. Indeed, she proposed this to Governor Walz and his Secretary of State. If you give me your voter rolls, I'll pull ICE out. Can you imagine? And think about that. What's particularly significant about Minneapolis, everybody, hear me, all my 8 AM 950 radio listeners. Your state has the highest percentage of voters in the country. And you are considered to be a model of election integrity. So what do they want your voter rolls for? And you are more likely to be struck by lightning than you are to commit voter fraud. And the people we see doing voting fraudulently have been the Republicans. Remember North Carolina? I mean, this is really, there is a pushback against you voting. So, but let's start here with the chairman of the Transformative Justice Coalition, who's a former prosecutor. I think it's important for us to highlight that, because we see you in the voting rights space, the civil rights space, but I think it's in the criminal defense space. But it's important for us to also understand that you've been in the system as a prosecutor. So you understand that, you understand the police and all of this in another way. Let's just step back and look at ICE for a minute, because the borders are, Tom Homan did something that was pretty major. Number one, he went to Minneapolis because there is, according to press reports, a lot of angst in the White House because this was not handled well, right? This is overreach, is a very, very gentle way of putting it when you see that at least 2 people have been killed in cold blood, right? So he said he's going to have a drawdown, but he's not surrendering. What does that mean to you? Just given what ICE has done, and given now that we're beginning to see that Alex Pretty was known to the ICE agents. You know, the BBC broke this story that showed you where he had gotten his ribs broken. But they have been keeping a database. That is what Tom Homan said that they were going to build, a national database of anyone who was a dissenter, anyone who's protesting. So it raises a lot of alarming questions about whether it was an accident. You know, if they knew who he was he a target? Because when you see the pictures of him, he looks like he's, very slender, fit guy, but he doesn't look like he's physically intimidating. But when you saw that video, which the right wing have used, you see that he was someone who was not playing. But apparently he was driving by. He saw ICE trying to take an entire family, and that to him was just a bridge too far. And he'd been part of one of the legal observers. I mean, they're all over. They're all over Chicago. They're all over any place ICE is. A lot of people have whistles, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, when you hear that, and this push and pull about the evidence, let me just start here. What do you make of Tom Homan saying that he's going to draw down in Minnesota, but not surrender? And Mayor Fry said, I have to see this to believe it.
Yeah, Santita, thank you for that. And you're right on point when we're talking about Tom Homan drawing down but not surrendering. What I think the language that he's trying to throw out is that they don't want to say that they were wrong. They don't want to say they've done anything that's wrong. They don't want to say that they've been overly aggressive and in essence, not just killed 2 people, right? Because, we also have the brother out in California that was taken out by an ICE agent. We have 32 other people that were killed in ICE custody. So there are a lot of deaths that are happening that are attributable to ICE and what is going on right now. So when Tom Homan's talking about Minneapolis and Minnesota, and really what he wants to do is he's trying to find some way to save some face, right? Because right now the political tides of Minnesota are against them. The political tides, I would venture to say, of the nation really, according to the polls, are against them. And so the question is, how can they now try to save some face and somehow reduce their presence in Minnesota? And just try to say that we've accomplished some of our purpose, we're now going to leave. There's so many problems that are just inherent in all that they're trying to do. Because for one thing, when we look at Pam Bondi in her statement that, if you just give us the voter rolls, your voter data, then we will get out. We will leave you. Well, if this is about securing these undocumented immigrants that are in our country, why are you saying you're going to pull out if you get voter data? They're disconnected. What is connected here, I think, is the play for power. And that's what we're seeing this is all about. It is that the administration is using their authoritarian tactics to try to put fear into people and to control and manipulate elections. So if they can get the voter data from the states, they can then continue their efforts to try to draw down, try to focus in and reduce who has access to being able to vote and what votes are counted and how they're counted. That's why if we go from Minnesota, from Minneapolis, from the statement of Pam Bondi, going for voter rolls there, voter data there, over to Georgia, and the FBI under Pam Bondi raiding the election place there to try to get the voting data so that they can go and start going through it and see what's what and try to make up some story. You're almost guaranteed you could write the script here, Santita. What they're going to end up saying at the end of Georgia is that, oh, see, we went through these votes. We've got this as evidence. No one else can get it. No one else can have it back. And when we went through it, Donald Trump actually won Georgia. That's going to be the end of this story of this investigation that they're doing now with the Georgia information. What does it ultimately do? When you start looking at what they're doing in Minnesota, asking for the voter data, doing the intimidation, doing the fear tactics, what they're doing in Georgia, what they just did in Georgia, which is the same thing. They're still going to be trying to invoke fear, intimidation to people that would be voters, to try to suppress people from voting, to try to say the system is rigged, is always their word, the system is rigged, and we now have the data to prove that the system is rigged, whatever they make up. This is their ultimate end game. This is what they want to do. They want to sow these seeds of doubt in the electoral process in the United States. This is what they're after. That's what the authoritarianism is all about. It's the power to control how people think, the information that they have to use to think, and all that comes along with it. That's what we're seeing right now on Santita. So when we talk about what we're seeing in Minnesota, you're seeing the lies. The lies in front of your eyes. You see the film from the people that have taken the film, but they try to tell you that what you're seeing isn't accurate, and they come up with these other stories. And once their stories get blown up, and it comes out as just a complete lie, the trust of the public continues to disintegrate, and that's the concern. When the trust of the public continues to disintegrate from elected officials, from the policing officials, from the courts, as we're seeing it, then that's what the authoritarian really wants. They want everyone to be afraid. They want everyone to be distrustful. Believe what I say. I'm the only voice that you should be listening to. That's what they're after, and that's what they're pushing toward, and that's why we continue to push back.
But isn't that having the opposite effect? It seems that I don't know. What are you hearing on your radio show from people?
What we're hearing is that people are pushing back. The whole thing was about fear, trying to instill fear into people, to have people not be willing to get involved with anything, to obey in advance, to be obedient in advance, and to not want to come close to anything because You'll be afraid of what will happen from the federal government, from these agents and everything else, all the weaponization of the departments that could then come after you. IRS could come after you. The prosecutors could come after you. What we're hearing now is that people are saying, "Whoa, I'm not willing to give up all my rights like that. I'm not going to do that. I don't want the next generation to look to me to ask the question, why is it that you gave up all of the rights so that we are now restricted, so that we are now living as numbers, and we don't have the rights to do whatever we want to do." So what we're hearing is the pushback from that. Is that everyday people coming together saying no. They're going to join the No Kings rallies that are there. They're going to join whatever protest they can to show that they are in disagreement with the federal government. And I believe, and we truly believe, that a lot of the change in policy, a lot of the change in tactic, a lot of the change in tone that you see coming from the White House now and the agent and the administration now is as a direct result of the people in Minneapolis and around the country that are standing in unison, pushing back from what they see happening with ICE. That's what's happening right now, Santita, and that's what we're hearing.
Well, what's been the game changer, do you think? Because it seems that
Mm,
every action merits an equal and opposite reaction. Because as we have seen so much, I mean, in the bitter cold, I've seen the estimates about the march last week in in Minneapolis, 50,000. It was 10 times that many people.
right.
And I say that as someone who is a veteran of marching. And I know from aerial photographs what 1,000 people, what 100 people looks like, what 1,000 people, what 10,000, 100,000, 200, half a million. I know what that looks like. And I mean, because when you march enough, you know this, because that's what we do. That's part of what you do.
Mm-hmm,
Numbers.
mm-hmm,
People came out from everywhere.
yeah.
And I'm wondering, and just given the fact that in the white community there has been such pushback and there is so much anger because they have been chasing ICE out of the hotel
Mm-hmm.
in Minneapolis. They have been, now people are standing guard with guns in their neighborhoods, daring ICE to come in. It's just, they've taken Chicago, they put it on steroids.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
so what does this say to you? I mean, and particularly as a prosecutor, I
Yeah.
mean, because there's always this pushback now. Oh my goodness, you know, uh, the administration has said, look, these people are standing in the way of law enforcement, which is what you have been.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you see?
Yeah, that's precisely what's happening in the way of some law enforcement, and federal law enforcement in particular, because a lot of the local law enforcement, we see lining up to try to be supportive of protecting the individuals
Mhm.
that are out there protesting. And the reason that they're protesting is primarily based on federal law enforcement and what's going on there. But when we start looking at what has been the difference, what is it that's driving these folks, the common ordinary people that would not ordinarily think about taking to the streets to go out and protest? What's driving them? What is it that has gone off on them, that has clicked on in them, that has said, I've got to have my voice heard. I've got to have my position stated. And some would say it was the death of Renee Good, and I think that was a part of it.
Mhm.
Some would say that it was the death of Alex Preddy. I think that's a part of it. Some would say that it was watching the 5-year-old boy that was being used as bait to try to lure and get his family taken into custody, and then for that 5-year-old boy to be sent off from Minneapolis over to Texas, right?
And they
Saying that
say, and Congressman Castro reported that he's doing, he's not doing well.
no, no, absolutely not. The signs of depression and everything else that the young kid is going through.
Mhm.
And I think it's a cumulative effect of all of this that you're seeing. You know, you're seeing these ICE agents and others along with the ICE agents that are grabbing people out of cars and smashing windows, and no warrants or anything like that. But it's almost like, they just do whatever they want to do, and they're not being held accountable for any of their actions. So when the people see that the Board of Criminal Apprehension, which is the state board in Minnesota, wants to get involved in the investigation, and the FBI and DHS push them off and tell them, no, you can't. We're not going to share any evidence with you. We're not going to have you involved in this at all. People are beginning to see the authoritarianism that's there and how it's affecting their rights and the rights of their neighbors, their friends, and their families. That's what's happening right now, is that it's when it becomes personal.
Well, wait. Hold that thought, because I'm coming to you before I get to the FBI raids and all that, but I want to kind of get in your thinking, because you have been on that side of the law. And there is the law, but there you have your personal feelings, right? I mean, some ICE agents, and I'm hearing about, through other people in law enforcement, that there are many veteran ICE agents who don't like this.
Right.
And they don't feel, they can't say anything. They feel that they can't say anything, but they are really bothered by this. And some are even angered by it. I mean, how does that impact morale? Because it seems like there is, what do you think is going on with law enforcement? I mean, because there's some people who support it, some people don't, on the federal and local levels, right?
Yeah.
And state National Guard. And the National Guard, I would think, would be harder, because it's a state National Guard, right? And these are your neighbors, which is why Bovino, when they brought the National Guard into Chicago, they didn't get the Illinois National Guard. Right. Oh no, they went to Texas. I'm like, why aren't they guarding their own border, since they're supposed to have they're sending everybody up here? What? So what happens on the force and within your community, your former community, in a time like this?
Right. Well, with the National Guard piece, Santita, before I talk about that, with the National Guard piece, we got to remember that the National Guards are generally controlled by the governors of the state. And so, in order for the president to try to call up the National Guard in Illinois, if Governor Pritzker is saying, no, you don't go, then they don't go. They're going to be controlled by the state, not by the feds. And so Texas became an easier move for the president to be able to move them, because they would be moving in alignment with the governor there in Abbott, and having them go. So all that would be in play there.
But what I also thought? I thought he wanted a culture clash.
Well, they're that too, right? They're just
you know what I mean?
So many. Yeah. There are a lot of levels to this onion that you could peel back and look at all of what's going on. But when we're talking about the law enforcement side of it, I have an opportunity, and as you know, I was a former prosecutor, so I'm close to a lot of police officers, local police officers, some federal folks, as well as an elected official, local elected official, which also, again, you're dealing with law enforcement. One of the interesting things that's there, and you are 100% accurate, is that there is a division within the force that goes on, because a lot of the officers, active officers, as well as retired officers, will tell you that the actions of ICE and the ICE agents are inconsistent with the training that they've received, and they do not support, and they make their jobs, the good officers' jobs, more difficult the way that the ICE agents are operating in Minnesota. And what people see are these actions by these law enforcement agents that are over policing and using excessive force, excessive violence against what really are not people that are hardened criminals or fighting back or anything like that. And what it does is that it goes against the professionality of the policing. If you are one of those officers who is really a professional police officer, you want to do things in accordance with your training, because you know that the actions you take will impact the entire and have the ability to impact the entire force, that you're seen as part of an entire team, that your action represents the action of the entire team. That's the reason they go through the training and the method that they go through the training and are held to that standard, to a higher standard. So the actions of what we're seeing, these horrible actions that we're seeing from law enforcement in Minnesota, it's going to have a divisional impact, right? Because you're going to have the officers that are saying what they're doing is wrong and they're making our job more difficult. You're also going to have some officers that are, on the other side. They're going to be saying, if they had obeyed, they should have listened to everything I say. They should do this. They should do that. They shouldn't be here. All those, that whole line of reasoning that's used there. But ultimately, there's a lot of division that's there that's then created, and it doesn't just stop with the officers. A lot of people, don't necessarily do the analysis with regards to the prosecutors, because the prosecutors are the chief law enforcement folks in law enforcement, whether it's the state level prosecutor or the federal prosecutor. They are part of the law enforcement team, and they are the part of the team where really the rubber meets the road in the courtroom, and then a lot of times are involved in investigations and warrants and all the other pieces to it. The creation of problems on the rank and file policing officers is also creating problems as well for the prosecutors. That's the reason why in Minnesota we've seen, I guess they're up to like 8 or 9 assistant U.S. attorneys that have now walked off because they don't like the direction and the commands and the directive that are being given to them on how to do investigations and what is supposed to happen. So you're seeing a lot of division and a lot of chaos within the policing and in law enforcement overall, from prosecutors all the way through to the community level policing.
Hmm. Let me make a pivot, because it's interesting, because at this time we are being inundated with a lot. You had the Attorney General who asked for the voter rolls, and that request is still out there for all 50 states and Washington, D.C. Some states have already complied, at least 10 have. Um, what is the significance of her request? Because my question for you is, what what is that about? I mean, because isn't aren't the elections controlled by the states? So
Yeah.
why would she, if that is so, why would the Attorney General want the voter rolls of all the states and the District of Columbia?
Yeah,
Why?
and you're correct. The elections are handled and controlled on the state level. The state is the one that administers the elections and what happens in each state, not the federal government. Even federal elections are controlled by the state for each state. What's happening here, and what I suspect Attorney General Bondi is doing, is that she wants to get control of the voting data, because once they have control of the voting data, they'll start doing what they call the cross checks, right? Trying to say
Mhm.
that this voter here, this name appears here and it appears there. It's the same name, Peter Kelly here, Peter Kelly there, or Isaiah Johnson here, Isaiah Johnson there, that they're all one and they should be canceling each other out. The concept there being that if they can get to the point of saying, and let's be clear, right? They didn't go after anywhere in Georgia. They went specifically for Fulton County.
Why is
Fulton
that
County,
significant?
Fulton County is the blackest area. That's Black Atlanta. Is Fulton County, and so they go to Fulton County, and if they can, and once they have all the voter data, I believe that their next step is going to be going in and saying, well, there this problem with the ballot, there's these problems with the ballots, there are all there are all these issues that exist, these voting issues that exist out of Fulton County. Well, why is that important? Well, the next step will be Fulton County should not be in charge of doing their own electioneering. They can't handle it. It's proven by these ballots and stuff that we've just did in this raid. We, as the federal government, we're going to now come in and we're going to oversee this. We'll run the election for Fulton County rather than having Fulton County run its own election. Why is that important? Because then they can start imposing manners and standards and practices that will suppress the Black vote in Fulton County. and once they're able to suppress the black vote in Fulton County, you're not going to have a Senator John Ossoff. You're not going to have a Senator Raphael Warnock. All this came out of black voters, a large part of it came out of black voters in Fulton County, Georgia, including the presidency of Joe Biden and the loss for President Trump. All that came out of Fulton County. That was the biggest block of black voters that existed for the state of Georgia, between that and Savannah, but primarily out of Fulton County. So that's why the focus is on Fulton County. This is what Attorney General Pam Bondi, I see, is angling toward, is how to suppress that vote, get the voting data, and then say they can't run their own elections. We're going to put some people in there to run the election so it can continue to suppress the black vote and lift up, particularly for the 2026 and the 2028 election. If they can suppress that vote, they can win back Georgia and try to remain in power.
I mean, so is it significant that Tulsi Gabbard, the spy chief, was present at the raid? Is that unusual?
With what we're seeing now and the way that the Attorney General and everyone else is operating, it's unusual.
I mean,
to
she's the director of intelligence,
right,
for the entire government.
Yes.
Why would she be at this raid?
I mean, it's all about, I believe, it's all about media hits, right? It's all about the appearance. They want the optics. They want all of that that's there. What do they call it? Real TV, right? Whatever that is.
Reality TV.
Reality TV. That's what you're seeing. That's what's playing out right now. That's what's playing out in Minnesota. That's what's playing out. This is reality TV, only it's very real. And her appearance there is another part of that reality TV. Kash Patel showing up at FBI investigation. You're not even supposed to be there. The FBI always operates very quietly. They don't want people to know, what's going on and all this other. What's he doing? Reality TV. That's what, and telling mistruths. It's all reality TV, and it's having a really horrible impact on the FBI in general as they try to do their jobs, if they do what they should be doing, and the impact that it's having on the American people overall.
We're talking with Attorney Darrell Jones, chairman of the Transformative Justice Coalition. And, of course, he's a former prosecutor, so I'm having him wear a lot of different hats today. Radio host, of course, you should listen to his show and Barbara Arnwine show. It's fantastic. Every Tuesday at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time on WOLDC. So please take a listen and tell people about it. Attorney Jones, what about this? Was this raid about the optics? Is it legal? I mean, I'm trying to see what they're doing. I'm still trying to wrap my mind around Tulsi Gabbard, the director of the Office of Intelligence. What she was doing at the raid, it just, in light of all that is going on. I mean, because it really does help to promote chaos in the country. Mm-hmm. And whatever we say, wherever we are on the political spectrum, one of the things that you depend upon is stability. I think that's why we haven't gotten over. I mean, the Civil War is something we're still trying to work our way through, because everything was suspended, all of your rights, right? When President Kennedy is killed in front of everybody, you take out the leader of the country, not just the leader of the free world, but whether you like a president or not, you don't want to see anything happen to them,
right? Because
it disturbs the peace. I mean, when they tried to shoot Gerald Ford twice, in a month or something like that, it was like, whoa, wait a minute, whoa. We just had a president resign. Whoa, wait. It just, as a child, that was unsettling to me. Watching Bill Clinton impeached and the chaos that you saw on the floor, it was awful. Nobody felt good about that. And you can't feel good about this because you've got people taking to the streets. They're planning a No King's March for March. In March 28th. It's still going to be cold. But
Mm-hmm.
people are, I don't know how many people are going to be out.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, we're confident that there are going to be millions of people that are going to be in the streets for this. And let me tell you, I'm part of the planning committee for the No Kings March, and we encourage people to go to nokings.org to get more information about the marches, where they're occurring. If you don't see one in your neighborhood, be the person that plans it. But I tell you, Santita, one of the things, and when you're talking about Tulsi Gabbard being there, and you're talking about Kash Patel being on site, when you talk about Kristi Noem being in places, making statements, J.D. Vance, etc. One of the things as a prosecutor that it was the biggest thing to be concerned about, and that was always being on the side of trust, getting information out that was reliable information. You needed the public, you need to earn and hold the public's trust. Because as a prosecutor, if they see you as someone who is disingenuous, is willing to bend the truth or not tell the truth or to lie, then they don't know what to believe that comes out of your mouth. So we've always wanted to be above reproach with regards to the information that we present. The same is true when it comes to the FBI and FBI agents. The same should be true as it goes to local prosecutors, the federal prosecutors, and law enforcement in general. You've got to be certain that you're not doing anything that can easily be seen and understood and discovered to be untrue. And that's what we have seen happen again and again here with the Renee Good shooting, with the Alex Preddy shooting. These are things that were just identifiable lies by that everybody could see, and were taped by bystanders and citizens and folks that were just on the streets, and it just contradicted the tales that law enforcement were telling. And so that continues to sow the public distrust of the elected officials that are presenting the information, the law enforcement folks that are presenting the information, and those that are in control that are presenting the information. How do people respond to that? How do people respond to seeing people that they know and people that they don't know but care for killed in the streets like that? They respond by saying, "This is wrong. I've got to do something." And that's why you're seeing this surge of people that are coming in. They're saying, what you're doing is wrong. We don't believe your lies. We've seen it for ourselves. We know it's not true, and we're not going to let it stand. We are going to act up. We're going to speak up. We got to say something to preserve our own integrity, as well as the integrity of the country with regards to our principles for which we stand. That's what we're seeing. We're seeing the churches across the country, Santita, coming together. They're coming together as we speak tonight. The PMBC is coming together tonight to talk about what they can do as a body to respond to what they're seeing happening. So, as March 28th approaches, and we have the next No Kings rally, we're going to see, I think, an increase with the people of color that are participating in it, and we're going to see people coming out like never before. The last No Kings rally was the biggest march for rights in our country's history. This one, March 28th, is going to surpass that easily. So it's there. The people are getting up. They're awakening up. They're saying no to what's happening, and they're really pushing back. And we've got to continue to push back in a unified way. But most importantly, we got to be certain that we check our voting status, be certain that we are electing people that are going to stand for the principles for which we stand. That's going to be extremely important. Let's watch this 2026 election, because, Santita, I anticipate that we're going to see some tactics employed to try to suppress votes around this country. And what we see in 2026 is probably going to be increased in 2028 for that presidential election.
What might we expect with this militarized presence in the country right now? I mean, what can we expect from, because they're still in Chicago. Um,
Mhm.
uh, Mr. Holman said, we are drawing down, we're not surrendering. So while a friend of mine said, yeah, he threw gasoline on the fire. He just didn't see it.
Mhm.
Um, what is it going to be like in these neighborhoods, particularly where you have black representation. Where you have black representation, you also have other people of color. You have poor people.
Mhm.
And ICE, that's where they are. What will
Mhm.
it be like going to the polls when ICE, who are now, according to different people up in Minneapolis, they're saying that, wait a minute, now they're not as easy to identify.
Mhm.
Now they're trying
Mhm.
to blend in more, right? Um, and one gentleman who I saw on social media, he said, no, but you can see them because you see the hats that they wear so they can identify each other. But so what is that going to be like, in these
Yeah.
areas? What, I mean, and what protections do we need?
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we're going to be asked for identification going into the polls. I mean, that's I'm wondering.
Well, that's part of the fear and intimidation tactics that are going to be used. I suspect, I've been saying it for a while, and I'll continue to say it. You're going to see some type of presence around some of the heavier polling places. You're going to see a presence of ICE. You're going to see a presence, perhaps, of National Guard. You're going to see a presence, some type of military presence is going to be there. And the sole purpose of that will be to intimidate voters from wanting to come in and to vote. And if you're a person, if you're an immigrant voter that is naturalized, or whatever the situation is that puts you in a position that you're able to vote, it's going to intimidate you as well, because if you have people back at your home that are not necessarily documented, you're going to be concerned: are they going to follow me? Is something going to happen to me? And what the Department of Justice is showing you is that they're willing to go after anybody for anything. And if you don't have the resources to support yourself, to defend yourself, the financial resources, you may very well end up in a very bad situation. So we're going to see a lot of intimidating tactics done around the polling places with that type of use. We anticipate also that there may be situations, and I fully believe this is going to happen. There are going to be situations where, in DC, we have these blockades, these rolling checks, where they stop everybody to check their status and this kind of stuff, and it
Mhm.
just goes from place to place. Look for something like that to happen on major thoroughfares to get to voting places, to try to hold it up, to make it a slower process. All of that is a part of the voter suppression, and some of the voter suppression tactics that I believe are going to be used during this 2026 election. Can't tell you it's going to happen through the primary, although you'll probably see a touch of it in the primary. But I bet you by November for the general, it's going to be open throttle. It's going to be open season. They're going to do all they can to interfere with that.
What what protections do we have? I mean, if you're hearing that, I mean, because rumors, bad news travels fast, bad information.
Mm-hmm.
But in this time, there is a lot of fear, and you have ICE, you have the FBI, you have the National Guard, you've got the police, we are we are policed.
And
I
don't
mean,
leave the DEA. Don't leave the DEA out, Santana. Anything under federal authority with those policing authorities, they're going to get involved. They certainly have the ability to get involved. And so look for all of that to be on display during the election season. Absolutely,
but but
absolutely.
but a lot of people
So
have records, or they're afraid, or they might have just gotten out of jail, or they might have a loved one who's just gotten out of jail, or who might be on their way out of jail. I mean, a lot of people are really in the system and they're compromised, right?
hmm hmm
And and through no fault of their own, because that system is uneven, which is another day. I mean, some people just come right out of jail, come out of prison, and they're able to vote in the whitest states.
hmm
But we have all kinds of roadblocks. They voted to give people who ex felons the vote. They restored it in Florida. Then the legislature overturned it. I mean,
right.
wow. So it's in this environment that people are going to be voting in a few weeks, while you've got millions of people who are going to be out in the streets now.
hmm
Because think about it, last week, hundreds of thousands of people turned out in Minneapolis. Alex Pretty was killed the next day,
hmm
and they shot him on the ground when they stepped back and they kept shooting. I when you see the video, my goodness, this is it was monstrous. It was an execution. And it is in this environment, people are going to vote. Do you think this is going to amp up the vote or suppress it?
That's an excellent question. I think that people right now are very excited to vote. They want to exercise that right. I think that one of the things that may happen and probably will happen if you're going to see an increase of people that are trying to vote by mail rather than going to the polling place to vote. That's one of the things that I think you're going to see an increase of. I have a lot of concerns with our seniors going to vote because they are the ones that can be very easily, targeted for manipulation and intimidation. So I am concerned with that. So for those states that have the early voting and the vote by mail, I encourage them to certainly take advantage of it, to do that. Santita, and I needed to address another point that you had brought up with the returning citizens and their
Hmm.
ability to vote. Illinois, much like the state of Maryland, is a what I call a street feet in the street state. That if your feet are in the
Hmm.
street, then you have the right to vote, right? Whether you're on parole, probation, it doesn't make a difference. If your feet are in the street, you have the right to vote.
Whether
And
you're on
and
for wait a minute, say that's slow down because people are listening, and if they're not in that situation, they we all know somebody who is. Feet in the street means what?
feet in the street means that you're not incarcerated, that you're not behind bars, that you are in the street. Whatever street it is, in the country, wherever you are, you're not incarcerated. So long as you're not incarcerated, you have that right to vote in certain states, not every state, in certain states. Illinois and Maryland are two of those states where what I call the feet in the street states. That once your feet are in the public streets, you have the right to vote. Now, the point that you were making is the point that goes to intimidation of those folks that were previously incarcerated, have the felony on their card or whatever, and they're concerned about voting at all. And what happens is in some states they have made it illegal for police officers to be around polling places for that very reason, that it intimidates those folks from wanting to go and cast their votes. Now, what happens when you have federal enforcement, law enforcement there? That's going to be another situation that we'll have to see how it plays out in the courts, probably. But they should not be intimidated. They should go ahead and cast their ballots, or they can vote by absentee ballot, by mail-in ballot as well in the states that have the ability to let you have no fault mail-in ballots that you can just go ahead and mail in your vote. Um, the other piece, Santita, that comes along with that, from that intimidation point, will be, how folks respond in terms of being educated as to what it is that they can do. We encourage people that if you encounter a situation, if you have a question, you can call 866 Our Vote, 866 OUR VOTE. There are attorneys that are there, they're on standby, they'll be able to assist, answer questions, and handle situations wherever you are in the country.
What if you see any of law enforcement as you're walking as you're just walking in the streets? I mean, I'm wondering how this is going to work, Daryl, because now people are afraid to go to school. They're afraid to walk their children to school. They're afraid to go to work. Up in Minneapolis, which is where Rainbow Push will be on Saturday, we're already there right now. Uh, the black community, and it's not being reported. We said this at the top of the show. They are moving to remote learning because so many people are afraid to go to school, and not just the undocumented or those people who are who they might have visas, work visas. I mean, they could really be here legally,
Hmm.
But people who are from the United States are afraid to be out. They're afraid, and they're afraid to send their children to school
Yeah.
because they're going into schools and they're pulling children out of schools. It is up against this backdrop where they kill someone in front of everybody, shoot him 10 times. And in both Renee Good and in Alex Pretty's case, they were denied immediate medical attention.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's important to bring you. I mean, we have to. I mean, it's against this backdrop that we're going to be voting,
Right.
and help me to understand that. I mean, how do we do that in these last few minutes that we have here? What protections encourage tell people why it is important for them to vote and how it is that they can. I mean, will they be safe? Can they turn to a police officer if they're being harassed by another law enforcement person? I mean, who do you turn to? Who
Yeah.
protects you?
Yeah, no, yeah. Your first line of protection will be the local policing authority, and so if something should happen and you're in line, go to your local policing authority because in most areas, whether you're in Chicago, Minneapolis, or Memphis or wherever you are, the local policing authority are the ones that are closest to the people. They're the ones that know the community, that know the neighborhoods, and they're more inclined and more likely to stand with you than the federal law enforcement authorities would ever be inclined. So your local policing is the folks to go to if you're being harassed, if you run into issues. You should go to that local policing authority. Absolutely, Santita. Santita, one of the things when you're talking about Alex Preddy, one of the things that bothered me most about
Mm,
that, and there was a lot obviously that bothered me about it, but after they had unloaded 10 shots into his body,
mm,
and they then sort of celebrated the kill, is what I call it, because they didn't allow medical attention to go to him.
yeah.
They went to the body. They counted the number of holes that were in the body.
Mm,
That's celebrating the kill, is what that is. There was no showing of remorse or anything along those lines. As a former prosecutor, one of the things you look at in a situation like that, and particularly if you're prosecuting police officers, the question becomes the reasonableness of the officer's action. They wouldn't be based, Santita, on what would be reasonable for Santita Jackson, or what would be reasonable for a person that is not a law enforcement officer. The question becomes, was it reasonable? Was it the reasonable actions of a law enforcement officer through their eyes as a law enforcement officer? Were the actions of were the actions of these two officers reasonable in shooting him these 10 times? And I can tell you that one of the factors that I, as a defense attorney, or I, as a prosecutor, would use in evaluating that is looking at what the other 5 or 6 officers that were around there, what did they do? What was their response? They
mm,
all saw the same thing, but only 2 of them unloaded their guns into this guy that put 10 holes in his body. What? The others didn't think it was reasonable. They didn't think it was necessary. The guy had been disarmed. Yeah, there was a gun, but he never had his hand on the gun. He didn't draw the gun. He didn't present a situation where it called for deadly force. And that's the
mm,
question. Would a reasonable officer use deadly force in this situation? And the answer to me, from all that I've seen, all that I've read, all that I've heard, the answer is no. And so, in viewing that case, I think that's the lens that we have to remember we're looking at it through, is through the eyes, I say, of the other 6 officers that did not shoot. Why didn't they shoot? Why didn't they feel the threat? Why didn't they pull their guns? Because they knew that the situation was handled, because they had the guy pretty much in custody, and he was disarmed from his weapon. They had already had that in their possession. So that's I think another part of what draws people, that angers people, that upsets people, that will
mhm.
be pushing people into the streets, that will be pushing people to vote. Is part of the reason now you see Republicans. Uh-oh. Did I lose you? It's part of the reason now that you see many of the Republican, now changing sides and disagreeing with the heavy-handedness of what's going on in Minneapolis. they see the political side of it now is not to their favor, but it's to their detriment. And so they're going to start walking away from it.
Well, having held elective office, they started getting phone calls, and you can see the stress on the president's
Yes.
face, and
Hmm.
you see the scrambling in the White House. This was just a bridge too far. You see them pull back Bovino. They pulled back Christy Nome, Secretary Nome. Excuse me. I always respect her title. I mean, her in her office. I don't like what she's doing. That having been said, I will always give her the respect. And Commander Bovino, they went too far, and they got them out quickly. And the people who killed uh, Alex Preddy were taken out of town immediately, and they've lawyered up. Wow. This is, and it's like you can't even talk about the vote without talking about all of these other things, right?
Right. Right.
Because just very quickly, why is it that everything is wound up together? It's why, to your way of thinking.
So when you say
Well,
it's all wound up together,
well,
you're
you
saying,
started off with the sigh, and that's it, because it's exhausting, Daryl.
yeah, yeah,
It's exhausting.
and it is, but it's also, a lot of the things that are happening are intended to be exhausting. There's the intention that if I throw a whole lot at you, you won't be able to catch it all and prevent it all, and some of the
Mhm.
things I want will get through and can occur. That's a part of what we see happening. We encourage people all the time, and and definitely encourage you right now as it's moving forward to call the switchboard at 202-224-31 and 21, 202-224-31 and 21, and tell the Senate to not give ICE any more money.
No,
Don't give
they're
them
not.
any more. Where they are right now, where ICE is right now financially, they have been awarded over $85 billion. There's more money given to ICE. There's more money, tax dollars, given to ICE than is given to all the other federal law enforcement agencies combined. More money has gone to Immigration and Customs Enforcement, to the ICE agents. They have hired, they had 10,000 agents a couple of years ago. Now, with this surge, they have over 22,000 agents that they've now brought in to descend on us, the citizens and the people and the residents of this country. We've got to say no, because what's being funded by the government, by our tax dollars, is this ICE agency that's going around arresting, detaining, and pulling out not only those that are undocumented, which is everyone likes to just talk about the undocumented folk, but you have people that are here on work visas, that on work documents, that are
Mhm.
here legally. You have people that are here on asylum that have been before a judge, and the judge has said you can stay here while your asylum case is being worked out. All of these folks are being gathered, and they're putting them into horrible detention facilities that we'll talk to it about at another time. Out just
Mhm.
the heredity of some of these situations that they put them in. And let's understand, because you always hear me, Santita, talking about the public trust and losing public trust. There's
Mhm.
no bigger factor in losing public trust than what the U.S. Supreme Court did in the Perdomo Nome decision, where they said, we don't care about anything else, but if they look like they're Latino, if they have an accent, if they have the coloration, you can look at where they work, you can look at where they live, and then you can stop them. That's all that you need is their appearance, their work, their location. That's enough. You don't need any more information. That's part of what also has contributed to the public distrust that and the lack of public trust that we're seeing folks have with regards to our institutions in general.
Well, if you want some brilliant analysis, I tell you what, you need to listen to your show on WOL at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time every Tuesday. You and Barbara Arnwine give some of the best interviews, some of the best guests, and the best information, which we need right now. It's empowering. Information is power, everybody. The right information. We're going to have Greg Palast coming up. The best democracy money can buy, Vigilantes Inc. In fact, he is going to have a national showing, Daryl Jones, of Vigilantes Inc. He's going to show you why requesting all this voter data, he saw it coming and he said, this is why it's so dangerous. And we're going to have Dr. Max Wolf. talking about, do we have a civil war on the horizon? Some people see that. People who have, there are metrics that you use to determine whether a civil war is imminent. We meet every one. Think about that. Hey, as exhausting as this time is, I'm exhilarated because guess what? Change is coming. Change is coming. Now we are the ones who are going to determine the kind of change that we're going to have. Think about that, everybody. Stay tuned for the second hour of the Santita Jackson Show. Much love to you, Attorney Daryl Jones.
And back to you too, Santita.
Thank you. Stay tuned. Come on, everybody. Hop on over to the next hour of the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota.